Imagine for a moment that you are watching a child throwing an epic tantrum in the supermarket. The parents are clearly embarrassed, trying everything to calm the situation. Most of us have witnessed this scene and perhaps even silently judged it. But here's a truth that might be unsettling. That tantrum didn't happen out of nowhere. It was built up through hundreds of small interactions, decisions, and reactions that the parents didn't even realize they were creating. And this leads me to a profound reflection that Mel Robbins brought up. No parent wakes up in the morning thinking about how they might create toxic behaviors in their children today. The intention is almost always to protect, love, and prevent them from suffering. But here's the problem that many of us don't want to face. Good intentions don't compensate for unconsciously repeated patterns. Did you know that behaviors considered toxic in children rarely stem from a specific traumatic event? In fact, they are born from something much more subtle and daily. Small permissions that seem harmless, emotional inconsistencies that go unnoticed, and limits that are defined in a confusing way or simply ignored. What makes this even more complex is that we are often doing the exact opposite of what we believe we are doing. We think we are being loving, when in reality we are being permissive. We think we are protecting, when in reality we are creating emotional dependency. And if this reflection has already touched something within you, if it has made you stop to think about your own experiences as children or as parents, then you are definitely in the right place. This is not content to accuse or blame anyone. The goal here is to clarify patterns that are often invisible to us, but that have a profound impact on the emotional development of our children. So, if you are ready for an honest conversation about education and child development, consider subscribing to the channel because we will delve deep into this issue together. The first thing we need to understand is why good intentions, by themselves, are not enough. There is a phrase that always impacts me when I think about child education. Parents teach much more by what they do than by what they say. And this is not just a pretty cliché to post on social media. There is a solid neurological basis behind this statement. A child's brain is constantly observing, absorbing, and learning through the reactions of the adults around them. They pay attention to the tone of voice we use, the consistency or lack thereof in our responses, and how we react when under pressure. Mel Robbins is very clear about this. Children don't necessarily do what we tell them to do. They do what they see works. And this is where many of us go wrong. When a certain behavior brings some kind of advantage to the child, whether it's extra attention, escaping a consequence, or getting what they want, that behavior tends to be repeated. It's that simple. The human brain, from a very early age, is programmed to repeat patterns that generate positive results. The problem is that often we as adults are unconsciously reinforcing exactly the behaviors we don't want to see. And we do this with the best intentions in the world. We want to avoid conflict. We want our children to be happy. We want to protect them from frustration. But without realizing it, we are creating a system where inappropriate behaviors are rewarded in very subtle ways. Leave a comment if you agree with this phrase, educating is awareness. Because I believe that when we truly internalize this, when we understand that education happens much more in everyday moments than in long conversations or moral lessons, everything changes. The way we react to a tantrum, the way we deal with our own frustrations in front of children, the way we set and maintain boundaries, all of this is constantly educating them. Now let's talk about the first very common mistake that can create toxic behaviors without parents realizing it. It's a mistake that comes from a place of great love, but it can have serious consequences. Confusing love with a lack of boundaries. Many parents genuinely believe that saying no to their children is a way of hurting them emotionally. There's a real fear that setting clear boundaries might make the child feel rejected or unloved. So what happens? These parents start constantly giving in. They negotiate everything, from bedtime to what will be served for dinner. They avoid causing any kind of frustration in their children as much as possible, thinking they are being protective and loving. But the result is the opposite of what they expect. Children who grow up without clear boundaries face some serious challenges. First, they fail to develop emotional self-regulation. Self-regulation is the ability to manage one's own emotions and behaviors, especially in situations of frustration or disappointment. When a child never experiences consistent limits, they simply don't have the opportunity to develop this crucial skill. Secondly, these children tend to react very badly to any kind of setback because they haven't been gradually exposed to small frustrations in a safe environment. When they finally encounter limits in the real world, whether at school, in relationships, or at work later in life, they lack the emotional tools to cope with it in a healthy way. And thirdly, something that can have lasting consequences, they begin to confuse desire with entitlement. When a child always gets what they want, they develop an expectation that the world should adapt to their needs and wants. This can create a sense of entitlement that is very difficult to reverse later. Mel Robbins is very direct about this issue. She says that limits are not rejection, limits are emotional safety. When we establish clear and consistent limits, we are actually creating a structure within which the child can develop safely. It's like building a fence around a playground. The fence isn't there to limit the fun. It's there to create a safe space where the child can explore freely. But there is a second mistake that is equally harmful and perhaps even more confusing for children: the emotional inconsistency of adults. Imagine a situation where a certain behavior is tolerated today and punished tomorrow, depending on the parent's mood. Sometimes the same behavior is dealt with calmly and patiently, other times with outbursts and irritation. This emotional unpredictability creates a very confusing environment for the child. They cannot understand what the rules really are, because the rules seem to constantly change based on factors they cannot control or predict. What does this teach them? It teaches them that it's worthwhile to constantly test, manipulate situations, and insist until they get what they want. The child doesn't learn respect in this type of environment. They learn strategy. They learn to read the adult's moods and adjust their behavior accordingly. They learn that if they insist enough, if they choose the right moment, if they use the right approach, they can get what they want, even when they initially received a no. According to Mel Robbins, this inconsistency creates something very harmful: anxiety and defensive behavior. The child lives in a constant state of alert, trying to decipher rules that are constantly changing. This is emotionally exhausting and can create patterns of anxiety that persist into adulthood. Furthermore, when adults are emotionally unpredictable, the child learns that they need to take responsibility for managing the emotions of others. They may become hypervigilant about the emotional states of the adults around them, always trying to adjust their behavior to avoid outbursts or negative reactions. This can create patterns of emotional codependency that are very difficult to break. The third mistake is particularly insidious because it seems completely innocent on the surface: reinforcing wrong behavior through attention. Let's think of a common situation. A child is screaming or throwing a tantrum. The adult, trying to be a good educator, begins to calmly explain why that behavior is inappropriate. They give the child their full attention, make eye contact, use a loving tone, perhaps even crouching down to the child's level. All of this seems very positive, right? The adult is being patient, trying to educate, showing respect for the child. But there is a fundamental problem with this approach. It is giving the child exactly what they want when they misbehave: attention. When a child throws a tantrum and receives a detailed explanation, when they disrespect someone, and this generates an intense emotional reaction from the adult, when they act inappropriately and suddenly become the center of attention, their brain registers something very simple: this works. Mel Robbins has a very clear way of explaining this. Even negative attention is attention. And for a child, especially a child who may be feeling ignored or neglected at other times, any kind of attention can be rewarding. The child's brain doesn't make a sophisticated distinction between positive and negative attention. It simply registers: when I do this, I get the adult's full attention. This teaches something very dangerous: that inappropriate behavior is an effective strategy for getting what one needs emotionally. And once this pattern is established, it can be extremely difficult to reverse. The child learns that when they want attention, when they want to connect with adults, when they want to feel important, all they need to do is misbehave. And here's something Mel Robbins emphasizes a lot: attention is emotional currency. We need to be very conscious about how and when we are spending this currency. This doesn't mean we should ignore inappropriate behaviors, but it does mean we need to be strategic about how we respond to them. The fourth mistake is perhaps the most well-intentioned of all, and for that very reason, it may be the most difficult to recognize and correct: solving everything for the child. Parents who do this are genuinely trying to prevent their children from suffering. They see the child struggling with something and immediately want to intervene to eliminate the discomfort. The problem is that when we do this consistently, we are depriving the child of the opportunity to develop crucial skills. We are avoiding momentary discomfort, but creating long-term emotional dependence. The child doesn't learn to cope with frustration, doesn't develop perseverance, doesn't learn that they are capable of overcoming challenges on their own. More than that, they don't learn personal responsibility. When there is always someone to solve the problems, to take the blame, to do the hard work, the child develops an expectation that the world should work that way. They don't internalize the idea that their actions have consequences and that they are responsible for dealing with those consequences. The result is a child who, when something goes wrong, automatically seeks to externalize the blame. It wasn't their fault. It was the teacher's fault. It was the classmate's fault. It was the circumstances' fault. And when something frustrates them, they react with disproportionate anger because they never developed the emotional capacity to process frustrations in a healthy way. This child may also develop what psychologists call an external locus of control, which is the belief that their life is controlled by external factors rather than their own choices and actions. This can lead to feelings of powerlessness, victimization, and lack of personal agency that persist into adulthood. Comment if you agree with this statement. Setting limits is also caring. Because I believe that when we understand this deeply, when we realize that establishing clear and consistent limits is actually one of the most profound ways to demonstrate love and care, our approach to parenting changes completely. Now, it's important to understand that parents don't create toxic behaviors in their children out of malice or lack of love. In fact, the opposite is true. Most of these patterns arise from a lot of love, a lot of care, and a strong desire to protect. They arise from the unconscious repetition of patterns that seem loving on the surface but have unintended consequences. The good news is that when adults become aware of these patterns and begin to make adjustments in how they respond to children, something truly powerful happens. Children have an incredible capacity to adapt and emotionally reorganize themselves when their environment becomes more consistent and predictable. When we adjust our emotional posture, when we become more consistent in how we set and maintain boundaries, when we stop inadvertently reinforcing inappropriate behaviors, the child naturally begins to organize themselves internally. It's as if they finally understand the rules of the game and can relax in the safety of that structure. The process isn't immediate and certainly isn't always easy. There may be a period where behaviors even worsen before improving, because the child is testing the new limits to see if they are real and consistent. But when they realize that yes, that the adults are truly committed to this new approach, they usually adjust surprisingly quickly. It's important to remember that parenting isn't about controlling. It's not about making the child obey through fear or manipulation. Parenting is about modeling behavior with consistency, clarity, and emotional responsibility. It's about creating an environment where the child can learn through experience, where they can develop their own emotional and social skills in a safe and predictable context. When this happens, when we create this kind of environment, something incredible is revealed. What previously seemed like a behavioral problem, what seemed like rebellion or disrespect, often transforms into healthy development. The energy the child was spending constantly testing limits can be redirected towards exploration, creativity, and genuine growth. And here's the true impact of conscious parenting. It's not just about eliminating problematic behaviors. This is about creating the conditions for a child to flourish emotionally, develop self-confidence and trust in relationships, and build the foundation for healthy relationships throughout their lives. This requires us, as adults, to do some inner work as well. We need to become aware of our own emotional patterns, our inconsistencies, our fears that may be influencing how we parent. We need to be willing to be vulnerable, to admit when we are wrong, and to make the necessary adjustments. But when we do this work, when we truly commit to conscious parenting, the impact goes far beyond our own family. We are contributing to creating a generation of more emotionally intelligent people, more capable of setting healthy boundaries, more prepared for genuine and respectful relationships. And this, ultimately, can be one of the most valuable gifts we can give not only to our children, but to the whole world. Because children who grow up with clear boundaries, emotional consistency, and appropriate accountability become adults who can create healthy environments wherever they are.